This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hey everyone, welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy and you probably are too. This is Emily, and I'm here today with Lindsay and Elisabeth, and we're here to talk nerdy to you about superhero identities. You know, the ones who are very obviously poorly disguised, or even the ones that it would be pretty easy to piece together, but somehow nobody seems to actually recognize them.
This episode is brought to you by Squadcast. As podcasters who all live in different states and different time zones, one of the most important things when we record, which we always do remotely, is the quality of our audio together. Current solutions like Skype, which we have used, and Zoom are dependent on our internet quality, but Squadcast is a simple browser-based tool that requires no additional software to install. We just click a link and we're good to go. The audio is recorded locally as high-quality WAV files and then magically uploaded to the guest's computer. We've been using them for a few weeks now, and we love the experience. To get started, go to squadcast.fm for your 14-day free trial.
So we're going to get into some superheroes and then even talk about maybe what might come of secret identities in the future of superheroes as well. So to start things off, let's have Elisabeth go ahead with a couple of her top picks.
Well, number one is a hero I don't really necessarily like in most forms, but it's one that is pretty obvious. He doesn't even wear a mask. It's Superman. I mean, yeah. Come on. I mean, it's Superman. It's Clark Kent. When he goes into his Clark Kent identity, he literally just puts on glasses. How is this such a disguise? I don't get it.
I don't even understand either.
I know people look a little different with glasses, but not so much that you can't recognize him, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I was even thinking about how he's so well known for just hopping into a phone booth to take off his regular clothes. And he's got Superman underneath. Would people not notice that?
Yeah, I mean, most phone booths, they have glass all on the side. So it's
right.
Seeing this happen.
I don't know.
I know. And I mean, he's dating Lois Lane, who is supposed to, be this hard-nosed, really smart reporter. And yet somehow she doesn't put together that, this coworker of hers is Superman with glasses.
Right.
I'm not sure what that says about her intelligence or really just the general intelligence of people in Metropolis, but...
Right. Especially if she's a reporter and she's digging into crimes that obviously Superman had helped fight against.
Yeah. You would think that she would kind of put it together It's serious that, whenever Superman is around, Clark mysteriously just kind of disappears and everything.
Coincidence? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least the next person, he attempts to kind of conceal his identity with what he wears when he's fighting crime. But the rest of the clues that he leaves is just completely leaves it open. And that's Batman. Because, honestly, with the cowl and everything, it covers, most of his face and, all around his head and everything like that. But, all of the tech that he uses that he's so famous for, and, where do people think he gets it? How do people think he gets it? He has a freaking jet. and a bike,
Right?
a really fancy bike, and a car that's practically a tank. Like, even if you're
Yeah.
not sure, like, if it's Wayne tech or not, like, obviously he would have to buy it. So, you know, oh, I wonder who in Gotham has the money to do this, you know?
Yeah, I don't know what people think. Like, it's just...
It's just common sense. You know, everybody just seems to just completely, oh, yeah, you know, let's put 2 and 2 together and that equals 4, you know?
Right. And like...
Plus,
oh, go ahead.
You know, Bruce has gotten injured as Batman, and I mean, he can't always conceal it when he's Bruce. I mean, I'm sure, you know, he's got some black eyes, maybe some split lips or a broken nose, and I mean, makeup only goes so far.
Yeah, but it's not like you could say Bruce Wayne just took up, like, I don't know, some jujitsu class or something.
Yeah.
There's no way he'd get beaten up that badly when he's taking, like, you know, when he's doing a recreational activity. I highly doubt that anybody, you know.
Besides, like, they would probably just add up, like, over time. Like, maybe 1 or 2 injuries you could kind of explain away, but then, like, you know, the more he gets, the more he can't hide. It's like, oh,
yeah.
Kind of
like, oh, really? You broke your nose again?
Yeah.
Again?
And you know, the funny thing is, in canon, someone actually did figure out that Bruce was
what?
Batman. Yeah.
Okay.
Drake figured out that Bruce Wayne was Batman, and then, of course, he became the third Robin after Jason's death. So at least one person in Gotham was smart enough to figure it out. But I mean, are we really going to say that Tim is like the smartest person in all of Gotham? There's absolutely nobody smarter than Tim.
I mean, I'm pretty sure somebody would have at least figured it out besides him.
Yeah. I mean, and it didn't really take him that long to figure it out. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, really kind of in the same vein as before, I mean, Robin, because, you know, once you figure out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, then obviously Robin is whatever boy that it happens to be running around with Bruce Wayne. Because, I mean, you know, they all kind of have, I mean, you know, Robin only wears like a mask on his face. So, I mean, like the hair and everything is kind of exposed. You know, obviously, you know, you can look at the height and the build and everything and kind of guess. And I mean, Dick Grayson was in a circus, and he was relatively well known as part of the Flying Graysons. So, you know, you kind of look at that, you kind of, you know, watch him with that, and then you kind of see, oh, who is this kid along with Batman who is doing all these splits and these acrobatic moves, kind of like exactly like Dick Grayson. Like, oh, wow, I wonder who that is. You know?
I didn't realize he was in a circus. Like, that's kind of obvious, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, like you said, even with Superman, like, if the one person mysteriously goes missing, and then this other person mysteriously appears when they're never around at the other times, like, it's kind of easy to piece it together.
Yeah, right? Or you would think that, at least.
Yeah, you would think that.
And I mean, unfortunately, I think the whole can't really conceal our identity kind of extends to most of the Bat family, because Batgirl, I mean, come on. Okay, so like in the whole city of Gotham, there's really like 3 women with distinct red hair that I can like think of off the top of my head. Like, one of them is Pamela Isley, who is Poison Ivy. The other is Summer Gleason, who is a reporter who has likely like covered Batgirl before. And like, I think in the animated series, she was actually live reporting at an event that Batgirl showed up at.
Okay.
So, you know, obviously, you know, it's kind of easy to, you know, say that, okay, no, she's not Batgirl. And then the third person is Barbara Gordon. So it's like, you got like 3 options here, and 2 we can easily rule out. So I wonder who it is. You know, and if she didn't like just let her red hair out the back of her cowl, then it might be a little bit more difficult. But she just let that fly. So it's like, like the one thing that can easily identify you, and you just let it go.
Yeah. Is it common knowledge that Pamela Isley? Is it Isley?
Yes.
Is it common knowledge that she's Poison Ivy?
Yes, she's a well-known criminal.
Okay. All right. So it's known that her criminal alter ego is Poison Ivy and so on. So like, obviously one is not the other.
Batgirl.
Yeah.
And like later on, like her look and everything has kind of changed over the years. Like used to, she had like, just kind of regular, a regular like human skin tone. But over time, she's kind of changed to have an obviously green skin tone. So that, along with it, kind of, it makes it obvious that she's not Batgirl.
Gotcha.
Now, there is that woman who also has red hair. But she also does not conceal that red hair, and she doesn't come along until later. So it's like still like, come on, it's obvious.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, for how smart that that we say that Batman is, he sure is pretty dumb when it comes to certain things like this.
Yeah, I feel like it's so like you're saying Batman and Batgirl doesn't know their identities, like each other's.
For a little bit, at least in the animated series, they did. But they figured it out. But like, you would think that he would teach his proteges, to conceal their identities a little bit better.
Right. I mean, from what I remember, at least Batman disguises his voice a little bit, right?
Yeah, but so like if you look at him physically compared to Bruce Wayne, you wouldn't necessarily piece it together immediately like you would potentially Batgirl or even Robin or Superman. But still, you can still piece it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could definitely see that. Yeah. Another one, which somehow also is from the DC universe. I don't know what it is with DC, but I don't know. They need to figure out their identity concealment here. So I'm only familiar with this character from the CW show, but it might also carry over through the comics arcs as well. Green Arrow, which the CW show is called Arrow, similar to Bruce Wayne, just because he's a really, really wealthy guy who uses a lot of special equipment, technology, that sort of thing. I mean, his alter ego is Green Arrow, but his real name is Oliver Queen. And so he's a really high profile person in Starling City.
That sounds about right.
In the show. Yeah. Starling City. So he's really well known. And he comes back after being presumed dead for 5 years, magically reappears again in the world. And they're like, oh, hey, look who's back. And so there's all these news reporters covering him, and he's hosting parties. And also, coincidentally, this vigilante starts cleaning up the streets the next night. I don't know. Seems a little suspicious to me.
Yeah. And I mean, in the comics and the Justice League Unlimited cartoon, which I highly recommend, it's an amazing cartoon. I mean, he doesn't, I know in the show, like at one point he wears a hood, but
yeah.
Like
they call him the Hood, actually, in the show.
But
I don't know.
In the comics and the Justice League cartoon, like he doesn't, like he either wears like nothing on his head, sometimes he'll wear like a hat of some kind, but still, like otherwise the only thing going for him is this face mask. Which
and
is
even
like only over his eyes.
But in the beginning of the CW show, he just smears like green eye makeup around his eyes, like he just has really shadowy eyes, and just really, really fancy. And then he just uses this gravelly voice to talk to people. I'm like, that's not obvious at all.
Yeah, totally. I would have never known at all.
Yeah. So like that one, I was watching the show, I was so frustrated that nobody figured it out sooner. And there were like so many times when he like just made this character swap with a second's notice. I'm like, okay, so he was just jamming out at this party he was at, and all of a sudden he sees a bad guy off in the distance, and so he's gone.
Yeah. Like I wonder how many mysterious disappearances he can get away with without anybody asking. I wonder.
Yeah, well, and the injuries too, like Batman. Like Oliver does not shy away from a fight when he's Green Arrow, and he obviously gets beat up really badly. And he's supposed to have a bodyguard, but he could take care of himself better than the bodyguard does sometimes. Like.
Yeah, it's like this picture I saw like a couple years ago of like Jason Momoa and like two of his little bodyguards. And like he's so much taller and bigger than both of them.
I love that one. It's one of my favorites because I think it was a meme with the caption, like it's his bodyguard. His bodyguards are like the mini bosses you have to beat before you get to the real boss. It's fantastic. Oh yeah.
What I think is really interesting is, well, I guess kind of interesting, is that Oliver Queen goes to a certain amount of lengths to try and prove that he's not the Hood, that he couldn't possibly be, because he gets his bodyguard to go and stop an arms deal, and that gets the policeman off of his back and says, oh, well, obviously, because you have the ankle bracelet, you couldn't possibly be him. So he takes the ankle bracelet off of him, and then literally, like, right then, Oliver Queen decides he's going to go on his next mission to do whatever it is he's doing. So it's like, well, yeah, all of this vigilante business starts up in Starling City. All of this activity starts up, and these people are going down right when he comes back from being shipwrecked. But at the same time, he really has to try and prove to everyone that he's not this person. And everyone who knows him, his ex-girlfriend and his little sister, and he repeatedly always keeps saying, oh, well, you know, that person, I'm not like that person at all. I don't care about other people, and I'm not someone who could be like that. So it's really silly because we don't know exactly yet what happened to him when he was on the island, but he keeps on saying over and over and over again that he couldn't possibly be that person because he doesn't care about other people. He's not someone who would.
It's like he thinks he does protest too much.
Right, he's like trying too hard.
Yeah.
And it's
like it's still all centered around him coming back, obviously. So even if, say, you wouldn't think he is this vigilante, obviously he has something to do with it because it's just the timing is just too convenient.
Yeah, but it's like nobody even notices that. And it makes you wonder what was going on in this town before he came around, because if they can't put that together and it's this easy to dissuade them from that. To be fair, the policemen kind of seem to have a pretty good grip on things, or at least his ex-girlfriend's dad, because he's at least trying to put him away, and maybe for more selfish reasons, but still there's at least a active police force, and they're actively going after this vigilante Hood character.
Well, it's probably, I chalk it up to what I call the Gotham education, where, people should be obviously able to see that, as I mentioned earlier, like Batman is Bruce Wayne and Robin is whoever Batman like kind of has under his wing, and Batgirl is Barbara Gordon, and yet somehow they just don't make the connection. And I don't know if it's something with the education system or maybe something in the water.
Maybe it's something in the water. I mean, Penguin did have that thing where he put that nasty chemical in and it made everybody go crazy. So
maybe they're just lowering the intelligence.
I feel like there's definitely an artistic license that's involved, and with this other aspect too. But I feel the same way. Like there's definitely a disconnect where, even when you're sitting down watching a horror movie and you're yelling at the pretty blonde girl to not go upstairs when she's being chased. Yeah. I feel like there's a definite problem there too, where it's just certain things you have to kind of put together for yourself.
Yeah. I was actually talking about this with my husband the other night where, when you watch something or when you read something, obviously with it being fiction, there has to be a certain suspension of disbelief, and some things it's just like you got to chalk it up to that's just how it is. But it's when those little things kind of add up and start tearing in plot holes that's when it starts to get just a little too much.
Right. Well, and I just find that's what's most frustrating about it. I also thought it was interesting because the Hood or Arrow or Oliver Queen or whatever gets confronted by his ex-girlfriend in one of the episodes that I watched. And she asks him, not knowing that he's Oliver Queen. And he's also using a voice modifier. So I was glad for that, because we're going to talk about someone else who it really irritates me that nobody recognizes his voice, and he's got a very obvious voice. So at least Oliver uses the voice modifier, But she says something like, well, why do you feel like you have to hide your identity? And maybe it wasn't her that he was talking to. Anyway, he very obviously says something like, well, I have to protect the people who I care about. And that's kind of a theme with this as well. It feels like the people who they care about or the people who care about them are the ones that they're trying to protect. And it's interesting because I don't really feel that way with Bruce Wayne, but I understand that there's a backstory with Green Arrow right now, and there's something going on that we don't really know about, and he is only now kind of getting into the juicy details, so I don't want to talk about what happened to me on the island, all that stuff. So I get it, but I also am like, people who care about you are going to care about you whether you are, anyway, maybe not. I guess I have to be a vigilante person in order to have those kinds of real feelings about it. I just think it's interesting that hiding their identity as this vigilante is somehow, I don't get how it protects people that they care about or people who care about them. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, it does. And, it's interesting how, DC handles it versus Marvel handles it. Because, obviously, one of the bigger heroes in Marvel that is all about protecting his identity is Spider-Man. But other than Spider-Man, there's a bunch of heroes that are very readily known, who it is. Obviously, people know Tony Stark as Iron Man because he just comes out and says, yeah, I'm Iron Man, And
right.
People know Captain America as Steve Rogers because, obviously Steve Rogers was fairly well known, more probably like a myth until he was finally unthawed, and now he's, now he's back. So people obviously know who that is.
Yeah.
But there's still a few that kind of hold on to this kind of superhero secret identity thing.
Sure.
And the ones that do is just, I don't know, most of them kind of devolves into a little bit of ridiculousness, I think. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's interesting how it's chalked up for different people. So, we talked about Spider-Man, and that's a full body suit. Obviously nobody knows that it's Peter, and he's younger as well. So, and what he's doing is kind of this amazing thing. Can you imagine if his friends all knew? I know Ned knows, but can you imagine if all of his friends knew that's who he was? He'd be outcast and hired for parties and all of that stuff. Just like in the one movie where he was kind of showing off, but on the DL, that's kind of how I feel like his life would be if everyone knew.
Yeah.
So,
and
I get it.
That's kind of what made the Civil War comic arc so powerful. One of my favorite panels from there is when Spider-Man actually reveals who he is, trying to just, take Tony's side and, say that, yes, this registration thing is cool, it's fine, even me who has been so protective of my identity, even I'm going to reveal who I am. And J. Jonah Jameson is watching this whole press conference, now I finally get to see who this person is. I've been, just arch enemies with him for so long. And then he finally pulls off the mask and is like, my name is Peter Parker and I've been Spider-Man since I was 15 years old. And J. Jonah Jameson literally faints just from the shock that this person he has been working with since this person was in high school. And because at this point, Spider-Man was in his 30s. And, he's been working with him all these years, and it's his arch nemesis that he's been trying to take down.
Right. Okay, so who else did we want to talk about?
Well, one of the most ridiculous secret identities, I think, in probably all of comicdom is probably Patch. That was one of Wolverine's, undercover aliases. And the way that he went about concealing who he was wearing an eye patch. And that's it. That is literally it. He just wears an eye patch. His hair is the same, his voice is the same, everything is the same.
Wait, do you need the eye patch though?
He's out fighting these silver samurai and these guerrilla fighters. He still pops his claws and everything like that. he just wears like an all black costume with like this fishnet mask, and somehow nobody knows that it's Wolverine. Like everybody's like, oh, who is this guy? I have no idea who this is.
Did he need the eye patch for some reason, or was it just?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was going undercover for a reason, but apparently that was the extent of his creative ability at that point.
That was the best he could do.
I say he must have gone to like the Clark Kent School of Secret Identities. Oh, I'm just gonna slap a little something on my face. Nobody will know it's me.
Well, Clark Kent did just, put some glasses on, and I have been told I look different when I wear my glasses, but I don't think I could pass as a superhero.
I think people would still like know who you are.
Okay, so we've touched on Marvel a bit. I wanted to, because I just finished all of those Netflix series. I may or may not have gone overboard and binge watched them extremely. I wanted to talk about Daredevil because that was Matt Murdock is someone who really, really grinds my gears because I love him. I totally do. He was a young kid. He lost his vision. He uses the red. At first, he's just putting like a band of black over his eyes. And then he has someone make him a really cool, the red mask that we see with the little double horns. And it completely blocks out the eyes. And part of that, I think, is kind of like the sensory isolation, because he does have the ability to see around him based off of the way noise bounces off of walls.
Echolocation?
Echolocation, yeah. So he has that. And when they do a example of what he sees, it's all in red. And it's very cool, the way that he's able to get around and all of this. And he has like the absolute perfect disguise, because he is himself with this little mask, but nobody thinks that this blind man who does walk around with the blind cane and has his friends help him, and he conceals his ability to have swift reflexes and things like that when he's with people who know him. So he has that as a guise, but at the same time, the people who are close to him and also have, such as like Karen Page, who has runs in with him as Daredevil and as a lawyer, really worries me, because she kisses him several times as both characters, and I just don't get it. I just don't get how that's not at least identified by her before he points it out to her. He shows her the mask, and like it's at the end of the second season, and it's painful when it happens, because I really wanted her to look at him inside the church or something and just be like, you guys have the same chin, the same 5 o'clock shadow, the same voice, the same everything.
Kiss the same.
I mean, it's good for him that he has Claire to help with all of his wounds and stuff, and she doesn't get to see that. But yeah, I mean, the same thing with the kiss. I know there's a Spider-Man kiss that's real iconic as well. But they kissed at least once, or she almost kissed Daredevil or something. And I was so ready. I was like rooting for her to get it, and she still didn't. But again, the same thing with the reason why he has to conceal his identity. And even near the end of the second season, he is locked up in a room as Matt Murdock, but he needs to go and be Daredevil. And his friend Foggy brings in his Daredevil suit and helps him escape so that he can go and not be affiliated with the other anti-heroes, if you will, the other defenders. Yeah. And he leaves them, but then rejoins them as Daredevil. So it's to preserve his identity as a lawyer, but then also, he repeatedly says he has to protect the people who care about him. He has to protect the people he cares about. And that's really like an underlying thing for me. But I also feel like with that group, the Defenders as well, there's a real weird element of why any of them would hide their identities, and most of them don't. He's the only one who does. So everyone knows who Jessica Jones is. She really can't, I mean, it's almost sort of a burden when she has to like pick up a refrigerator to get it out of the way. And, Luke Cage is known in Harlem as Luke Cage. They have an app for him and all this other nonsense. So they know who he is. And, Frank Castle, he doesn't even, he's all over the news. People know exactly who he is as the Punisher. Yeah. And how come none of these people are caught, first of all? And I'm missing someone. Oh, Iron Fist. But Iron Fist is weird. Yeah. I can't really remember if anybody even cares who Iron Fist is, because it's more of an underground kind of battle going on.
Yeah. I mean, like, a lot of the characters that we've been talking about, like, most, if not all of them, are kind of more like old school characters with like tons of history, like, just going back decades to when they were originally conceived, and when this whole, superheroes have to have a secret identity thing was, par for the course. But like a lot of the more recent characters, like Frank Castle and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, I mean, they make no attempts to cover their faces. They make no real effort into cultivating and keeping a secret identity. And it kind of makes me wonder if the whole concept of maintaining a secret identity is slowly becoming obsolete. Because, I mean, in an age where face recognition technology and digital footprints are everywhere, I mean, it's super hard to go, to not figure out people are, this person is, working as a vigilante. Because, I mean, we all have, a camera in our pocket, pretty much. We can pull it up and live stream. And so, I mean, if somebody were to do that to Superman, like trying to, change into a Superman outfit in this glass case, I mean, obviously, then the secret's out,
Right, exactly. Oh, no, I never thought about it that way. I mean, the face recognition on its own, my phone knows who I am. It knows who my daughter is. It knows who the people I hang out with all the time are. I couldn't even imagine. But it is interesting when you think about it, because that Luke Cage app that I was talking about, that's like a joke. Like, they refer to it in the movie or in the show a couple of times, and it's funny because it's like it's kind of a burden, but it talks about, last time you cited Luke Cage, last time you saw him. But imagine if these guys had Facebooks or Instagram and they were, chronicling their feats of grandeur, and then everybody was able to see it. If they had their followers and things on Instagram, it would be a completely different beast.
Yeah. And I mean, I know in the Injustice comics, which is like an offshoot of like the main DC continuum, but I know in those comics, when basically Superman is a bad guy and Batman is fighting him, at one point Batman has to go into hiding. And Superman literally just goes on their social media and posts, Batman is Bruce Wayne. Boom. Just like that. And his secret identity is completely blown. And all it takes is a few keystrokes and the click of a mouse. Wow. So it's like, in this day and age when we hardly have any real privacy, whether it's by choice or not, the concept of having a secret identity may not really be attainable. And eventually, even further in the future, it may be a complete impossibility. So I'm kind of curious how like these superheroes are going to possibly change and evolve, or just stick to their guns of, oh no, we have to have this secret identity, even further in the future.
Right. Wow. Thanks for getting nerdy with us today. Talk nerdy to us. Are there any other superheroes who you'd like to talk about, or who you think were easy to guess at who they are? Will the whole secret identity trope be phased out in the future? I can't even wrap my head around that. Find Beauties and Headcanons on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr and share your nerdy topic suggestions. Subscribe to this podcast and others from Public House Media on iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and wherever good podcasts are found. We still love feedback, so if you liked this episode, or even if you didn't, please give us a rating and a review so that we can keep on making great episodes for you. I'm Lindsay.
I'm Elisabeth.
And I'm Emily, and thanks for getting nerdy with us on Beauties and Headcanons.